a couple of days later, something emergent happened in my home that was the catalyst for things changing in the way they needed to change. And that was when my daughter said I wasn't myself.
So today, my good friend Dom, aka Magical Goddess Dom, is going to be here. She's actually had a very impactful experience through what we call the creative community, just being able to show her healing journey. But outside of her creative endeavors, she's an educator and a mother, and I found that to be very important. And you'll see in this interview how much this was able to help me heal and recognize what was important to me moving forward in my life as well. So without any further ado, I don't want to hold y'all up too much longer, but if you do know a mother, an educator, someone who wants to be a creative entrepreneur, get on stage and really show their passions, I think this episode will be a really, really good one for them. And if nothing else, stay tuned. My name is Terrence Harris, and welcome to the creative community. So I wanted to tell you, right, I've known you from going to, I believe, your sister's event at Miss Seeley's.
Yes, Aboriginals Got Talent.
Okay,
yes.
Right. I'm just making sure I got it correct. Shouts out, you know what I mean, to Kalinda and shit. You hear it?
Yes, pieces.
So, yeah, breathtaking performance. So that was like my first introduction to you. I'm like, well, she's spitting, right? So I'm now learning more about you as I've been getting acquainted with you over the months, about your interests, your life, your other crafts and skills. And so I want you to introduce yourself to the people, but then, like, you know what I mean, you really introducing yourself to me for the first time, because we don't really hold the same space often. Right. So, like, this is the opportunity I get to learn you.
All right. Peace and love. I'm Magical Goddess Dom. My first name is Dominique. I'm from New Jersey. I'm actually from Ocean County. I used to travel back and forth here to do business. I went to school at Rutgers Camden, so I was very interested in trying to get into Philly to figure out what was going on. My parents were very much adamant about me having a certain type of life, but I'm the type of person, I do really what I want to do, and then I figure out later that everyone's upset, but it didn't matter. I found my way here. It's taken me almost 15 years to get here, but I found my way here. It's been a long trek, but in between all that, I've had a lot of different experience. I started in the church. I was the music director from age 16 to age 32. So I directed children, adults, and nurses. But it was my life for a very long time. So music is something that I was born into. It's something that I know, and I have a background in it that also gives rise to the magic that I've gotten myself into as well. I used to work in medicine. I thought I was going to be a doctor. Come to find out, that's my past life. This life, I'm supposed to be integrating more spirituality, and I'm learning more about the world around me, and then teaching people based on what I've learned. It starts with music. That's like the basis for it, because there's so many different elements that you can learn about music. There's physics, there's math, and those things have always stuck out to me, which is why I wanted to go into chemistry and physics. But I figured out that it was elemental. It wasn't supposed to be tangible for me in that space. I have 4 children. They are the lights of my life. I'm learning more about being an open mother because I came from a controlling environment. So what I'm learning in teaching is also how to open up to guidance more than control. Now that I've seen that, I've seen more love between me and my children, and I've also seen more love between me and my students. I'm able to understand that I haven't learned it all, because I'm a know-it-all sometimes, but there's so much more to understand, and I'm not going to achieve it all here, but whatever I take in, I spit back out as with creative flair. With that being said, I've created worlds that I didn't realize I had been creating this entire time. I actually am also a writer. That's really, music and writing is my main crafts. Writing, I've created worlds that I can pull into this dimension, and I use those mediums with my herbalism, with my music, with my writing and teaching. So the characters that I've created are just extensions of people that I already know, or extensions of myself. And those elements, I live by them. So that's why I went from wearing all black and wearing dark colors and covering everything about myself to wearing bright colors, being more attracted to the full spectrum. And that's where I find myself today. And that is why Philly appeals to me as well.
Word. And so like in the beginning, I wanted to ask you too, because like I want us to be equally, you know what I mean? I'm really crazy about symmetry. If you've ever watched one of my episodes, I just go crazy about the symmetry of the video. So can I scoot in front of you, or you want to scoot? Okay.
I can move too. How about
all right,
we meet in the middle?
Together. Boom. Right. All right. So first thing that just stuck out to me is origin. Like you said, I suck with like names and remember I'm Orange. Or what was the first place you said you were from?
I am from Ocean County.
Ocean County. I was going to say Orange County. Like, y'all know I was going to Cali with it, right? So, Ocean County. So, I'm really big on origin stories because I'm from the UK because my folks was in the military. So, I lived there for like 5 years and then I moved to VA. You know what I mean? And then that's how I ended up in Newport News, Virginia. And so I'm big on origin stories. So like, how did you end up, like what is Ocean County? Yeah, like I want to just learn a little bit about that.
Ocean County is like, you know how Jersey is known for its beaches. It's known for the shore.
Yeah.
Literally Jersey Shore, where they filmed that over in Seaside, that's the beach that I grew up with all my friends going to and hanging out. Yeah. My ex-husband is from Long Branch. That's right up the highway, up the parkway.
Okay.
We had a lot of, I don't want to say that it was centered around the beach, but the beach was a major part of growing up, being near the shore or seeing people coming in and traveling from different places. So we didn't know what we were at. We didn't know we were in a rich area. Ocean County, unfortunately, is also known for the intense drug use. I believe at one point in time we were number 7 in the country for the amount of drug use that was taking place there, between the youth to homeless vets. And I'm like, what the heck's going on here? Like, why are we known for this? After Sandy, of course, they cleaned up the beaches and everything, and they started building Pier Village, so tourism started to take off more in that area. And it's been expensive too. So you have a lot of young families and people that come from that space that end up having to move also. But on the short side of things, it's a beach town, or near beach town. It's large. It's got a large Caucasian population. Not terrible, but interesting.
Yeah. It reminds me, like, it just, when you said it, I had a reflection of where I'm from in Newport News. Well, they call all of Newport News bad news. So every time I go anywhere, like outside of Virginia, and I be like, I'm from Newport News, people be like, you talking about bad news? But it's like you said, like, when I lived there, I didn't associate it with that. Like, you know, when you're a part of an environment, it just hits different. And then so I grew older and I started recognizing infrastructurally or like socially how it garnered that affinity with people. So that was what it just made me think of when you said that. It's like on the front end, Newport News is a military city where you send your kids to or work at the shipyard, but like underneath that surface layer is, like you said, we're surrounded by some of the highest rated crime regions, you know, a lot of uneducated public assistance in impoverished communities. Underneath that, like you said, that initial topsoil of what seems to be like affluent wealth and stuff. So that's what it just kind of resonated with me. And you know, you was talking about having a family, and one thing when I used to be out there, I always put this thing down because I have I get so distracted when people walk by and this shit is not working. So so like I initially grew up with my father because my mom, you know, she left. Just keep it a being. So and I hate saying it like that because I know my mom watches stuff and she'd be like, can you just shut up about that? But I'd be like, no, I can't. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm sharing my story, like you're saying, you sharing your art. I know that's my art form. I know when people move through the world that's something that shapes them. And, you know what I mean? I'll wear that on the front because I want people, you know what I mean, to understand why I function the way I do. I'm very big on form and function. So like my dad and me grew up in Newport News, and the first thing that's like one of my main memories, like when my mom left, that's when everything kind of like shifted and I started becoming more like my environment instead of like the dynamic that was being built in my home. So, you know, I always shout out my mom because she's the one who really gives me the drive to recognize when things ain't right and still push past it, even if it might make everybody uncomfortable. Because I know why my mom chose what she chose. She had to do what's best for herself. I understood that as I grew older, started being with women and stuff. I started seeing like, oh, okay, I get it. You feel me? But like, what have you mentioned how that less control, more guidance in your dynamic with your family. Like, I'm just interested in your point of view as a mom too, because like that always just moves me. Like anytime I talk to moms, because of my situation or my circumstance of like our relationship with my mom, it just make me think about how other moms be thinking and shit.
Well, my relationship with my mom is interesting. My mom was my pastor, so it was a controlling relationship, but not in a way where I saw it like that at first. I knew it was like that, but I didn't really, I was so busy doing what I wanted to do, I didn't realize the effect that it was having on me with the religion and me wanting her to be proud. It took a lot of internal reflection for me to realize what was going on, but I had to step away. Again, I told you I was the music director for 16 years. Yeah. So it took me 32 of those years, I would say maybe really more like 20 of them, to realize what was going on. I love my mother, but I also reflect her life very much, so sometimes it bothers me. My mom is a teacher. She was in the military. She has 4 children. I have 3 sisters total. I have 2 sisters with my mom and my brother. I'm the oldest. So there was a lot that I watched her go through that I didn't think anybody should have to go through, but then there's a lot of things I watched my mother accomplish, and some of those things I helped her accomplish because of the skills she passed with the writing. In recent years, I've started to talk to my mother more about things that I experienced or we experienced together. I've talked to her more about myself because my mom's a Gemini. She don't really want to hear all that all the time. Sometimes she likes to like, you know, ain't nothing wrong with listening. I love Geminis. They're actually very central to my life. My mother, one of my daughters, my grandmother on my father's side, Gemini energy is very important. I understand the ability of using air to push things around, to make things work the way you need them to work, and I appreciate that. But on the other hand, it's really difficult. It's been really difficult for me to express myself with my mom without being emotionally hurt by it. I noticed that reflecting in relationships, especially with my daughters. I have a 15-year-old daughter. The most we've spoken about her personal feelings has been in the last year. And I have allowed her to open her, like use her voice more because I feel like I didn't get to do that. No offense to my mom talk over me a lot, even when we are having a benevolent conversation. So I had to learn how to be quiet when my children were speaking and listen to what they're saying so I understand where they're coming from. And then my mom has also influenced my decision to get married young to somebody that wasn't a bad person, just not a good person for me. We were good in a certain aspect, but once I got pregnant with my daughter, the state of our relationship changed. And in all honesty, I also knew very young that I was bisexual at the time. I'm queer now. I identify as queer because I don't really think I don't feel like there's get into that later. Okay. I identify as queer. And I noticed now as an adult, my mother always knew, but she had such a problem with it because it was self-expression that she couldn't control. And because religion states,
that's right, yeah.
Like, you going hell. And I'm like, I think she told me, she was like, yeah, something. She told me, she was like, private parts are for having babies. I sit there for pleasure. If I want to have a baby, I'll call a nigga. I got 4. Like, what you mean? Like, how you talking to me like that? Like, and then look at your grandchildren, because by listening to my children, I listen to them energetically too. So I'm watching. I got 1 son, and my son is very curious. He's a curious Aquarius. He's not necessarily identifying anything. He's just realizing his place in the world and that he lives in his own. So I have to respect that. My daughter identifies as herself. But the way that she relates to the people in her life, I'm noticing I got to give that space because I can't tell them how to love, how to express. I can only give them guidance. So, and then I got a lot of Capricorn on my chart, which is very much controlling. So I'm like, all right, what can you control? So a lot of times I had to start saying to myself, I talk to myself a lot. I be like, I'm the realest nigga I know. But I mean, relatively, we touching right now. If we were to touch, we're not really touching. Our electron clouds are moving very close together to one another, but they're not actually touching. So I don't really know for sure, right?
Like, I get what you mean.
I don't really know if you really exist. It doesn't mean that you don't exist. It means like I can't really touch and know for sure if I broke it down in math. So I started applying it to myself, and then having my children apply it and talking to them that way as well. Like, I'm not saying me and my kids be cussing each other out, we don't, but I'm starting to understand the power of words and how to teach them how that's just a form of expression. And please don't go to your me my house talking about this, that, and the third, please.
Dom said, right.
Yeah, like, mommy told me we could say this. Like, I didn't. Not at me my house. But when you're at home, I'm now starting to redefine what that means. I'm starting to redefine what it means to be a mom and my role relative to guiding them more than making them what I want them to be. I can only do that for myself.
No, I really think a lot about that old paradigm that we grew up in, where, you know, that expectation level used to be like paralyzing. Like, it used to be like, yo, you need to do this, and if you don't do this, it's gonna be a lot of like friction and pressure in the crib. And my folks is from the military, so sometimes they didn't even really see any of the efforts that were being made in the house, because we had like this sentiment in the house that was, if you go to the military, you don't have to deal with society. Like, my parents were super not civilian. Their whole, like, they had this thing where it was like, we don't operate like civilians. We don't shop like civilians. We don't this like civilians. We don't pay for school like civilians. So they, like, that was how I got influenced at a very early ages. You can basically shortcut this society thing if you just go to the military. So I adopted that until I recognized, when I turned like 16-ish or 17, what the military industrial complex was and how they carry out, you know, their missions and what they actually do. And, you know, spiritually, it just didn't align for me. So I backed out of that. And that caused a lot of like disappointment in my parents as an adolescent. So what you were saying, just kind of like that paradigm, and most of the people I talk to, that's one of the more like driving factors for what they either do identify with, or they got to reverse engineer so that they can find themselves. So I always ask people that are my peers, like, about their relationship with their children as well, because I want to know more about it. Gives me insight on the future, like what it's going to look like, because I don't got no kids yet, but I'm in that chapter now where I want to start a family. And that's why I've been becoming more intentional with like conversations and the people that I'm putting around me and the environments I choose to invest in. So it's like I want to shift to a different idea of the conversation, because you mentioned the background in music, and I'm acquainted with that, but I want to take some time to get introduced to the things that just more of what you do, like just getting to know more of you, because I feel like I asked enough background information questions. Like, I want to just get to know you more. So let's just make it a more concise question. Since that time I saw you at the event, at the Aboriginals event, what have you been doing? Like, what's like, you know, just catch me up to what you've been on since then.
I left Jersey. Long story short, me and my kids were split for a little while. We're coming back together. And I have been transitioning out of a medical career so that I can transition to a career that gave me more opportunity to be creative with myself and my children. Teaching was the first avenue. So I've been working on that, and also working personally on writing music just for myself. And if I'm called to share it, I share it. And also cultivating that in my children, so watching what they do and being like, okay, well, this is what mommy's doing, so show me how how do you do that? What show did you write with it? So integrating my inner child with my current children, and then learning from other children that I teach or that I'm around in the schools, and just utilizing that magic. That sounds crazy. I'm not siphoning energy from children, I'm sharing it. Let me say it like that, because that sounded crazy. Yeah, that sounded crazy. But yeah, sharing magical energy with different creative forces that are younger and that need a little bit more guidance, and that need us to be more of ourselves so they can have the courage to be themselves.
Yeah, and now I think I have like mad questions, because what do you like? I always find it to be interesting when I be around kids, because like they always seem to have, like you said, something that can be like a sharing learning experience. Like I always feel like I learn more from them than I'm ever really teaching them. They seem to know whatever. It always seems like they already know what they want to do, and you can maybe provide some guidance and some resources and stuff. So, like, what have you been learning? Like being around the kids, and like you said, using the moments where you're guiding your children to align with your inner child and like creating that synchronicity or like that symbiotic growth relationship, like, you know what I mean, almost even like motivating each other to grow and become your best versions of yourself. You feel me? Because I don't know, I feel like kids be knowing that what they doing for themselves, and then sometimes like as adults we can kind of cloud that. But I remember when I was little, like I knew I wanted to go to 7-Eleven. I knew what I had as my destinations. It might not seem as the biggest things to get done to adults, but like that's pretty much my premise, if that makes sense.
What I've been learning first is that, I mean, we all know this, kids are great tempers of energy. They know immediately if you're real or not. So
wow, yeah. That's crazy. You just started right there, because they know you don't like your job. They know you. They feel you. Like man,
they be like,
you ain't him.
Like ill.
Yeah.
Like, from substituting, I've learned, because I substituted in Camden because that's the place where they needed it the most. Like they didn't have as many resources, and I'm like, I need to work, so I'm gonna go.
Right.
And when I was there with the kids, like the best thing I could do, like I didn't never show up dressed super professional. That's not me. I don't like being hot and uncomfortable. And I'm like, well, neither do kids. I guess that makes sense. So we all showing up as who we are appropriately. And then I would just introduce myself to them, and they would want to ask questions. Sometimes you got to answer questions kids have. I grew up with the children should be seen and not heard.
Right.
And that sounds terrible, because kids have great ideas, and sometimes they have insight we don't see. And translating that to my children, I wasn't myself for a really long time. I told you I have a 15-year-old. Before I married her dad, it was just me and her. And I had other things going on, but it was me and her a lot. And she remembers that very, very intensively. Like, she remembers people's faces. She got things to say about people I had around. She's funny. She a comedian, really. But she recognized when I wasn't myself at the end of her father and I's marriage. And she realized when I came back to myself. Just recently, we've been talking a lot. She also came to herself, so she was able to recognize it and let me know this not true. Like, you never listen. You're not emotionally. You're not there. If I could insert a little bit, I call him my bonus father, but that was my dad. Now, no offense to my biological father. That's my father as well. But my dad passed away New Year's Eve, 5 p.m. A couple of days later, something emergent happened in my home that was the catalyst for things changing in the way they needed to change. And that was when my daughter said I wasn't myself. So I wasn't listening a lot because I just didn't want to be in the house. And I was there, but I was on autopilot. So to actually sit and listen to my daughter when we had gone through this crisis time that we was going through with these major changes in our family, moving from Ocean County to this area, being split for a little while, I was able to gather more insight than I had in the 2 years that I had thought I was going within myself.
Yeah.
I gathered more insight from listening and watching the progression my daughter had from being this 14-year-old kid from Ocean County to now. She like, Mom, like, I'm gonna need a little bit more from you. I'm gonna need you to show me who you really are so I can show you what's going on. And I had to, it was either respond or lose my daughter emotionally. She only 15. I'm not saying that it's okay to lose people emotionally, but like that's a lot to go through. At 15, you're at a place where you're going through a lot. You're in the middle of your second Jupiterian return. So the 13 years, Jupiter take 13 years to let's just say it's a 13-year cycle. At 13 years old, a lot of things change for your mind. You are on your way to high school, and we don't realize that the world is governed that way. So even the way the kids are in the younger years, it's governed a certain way. That's why the grades being placed in certain places and with certain kids is important. So yeah, I be saying a lot. I've
that's
a long story.
That was an excellent explanation of what you've learned.
Yeah.
That's what you gave me insight now is like, I think that part where you talked about her checking in with you and saying like, yo, this ain't hitting the way I needed to do it, and you being willing to receive that. And I remember moments when, you know, like you say, you want to connect. Well, I would want to connect with my peoples, and like they would just like Shaquille O'Neal just smack that joint down. So like to hear that that's what you did. It, you know, I always talk to people about how, you know, you probably heard this 100 times. If people know kids talking about when I'm gonna be a parent, you know what I'm saying. So I be that person. I'm like, when I'm a parent, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And so like I always imagine those moments that I was gonna be receptive. So that's inspiring. That like, you know, you moving in that direction and just accepting the good with the improving moments. Like, you just taking everything and really using it as spiritual navigation for you to, like you said, live this chapter or this physical experience that you in now, to collect information about your spirituality and then tap into your past life and using the like, I'm starting to I'm gaining some insight on who you are. So, and then I gained so much information, like when I became of age, like legally, like I'll lock your ass up, a man age. I didn't even feel like a man though. Like, I was going to court, I was getting in so much trouble, and every time I would be tried as a criminal, they would always try me as an adult. And I'm like, bro, I don't even know what I'm doing yet. Mm-hmm. And I had a very spiritual moment when I was like 17, and it was pressing me with some charges, and I was sitting in my house, and I remember like yesterday, I always tell the story to people that I really get close with, is like, I was listening to Kendrick Lamar, Cushion Corinthians, and there was a bar, he's like, you're gonna ride for it, you're gonna die for it, right? And I just was smoking this Black and Mild, and I was like, I didn't do nothing wrong. Spiritually, and the God that governs me, I smoked weed with my friends, and I was trying to cope in the environment that I live in. And now y'all trying to try me as an adult and take my education from me and separate me from my parents. Like, I don't feel like I'm a criminal. I feel like I'm somebody who needed some guidance that was not there. And so I was smoking the Black and Mild because I'm like trying to obey. And don't smoke, you gotta piss this day, you gotta come to court, and I'm trying to obey, and I just was listening to that song, and I'm like, these people not my master. Like, I had to let it go, the fear of like, they're gonna lock you up, and my dad's disappointment and all of that, and just recognize like, if I'm going to be this person, I have to accept the consequences that come with it, because this is who I am. Like, I'm not the person y'all trying to mold me into, fear me into, scare me into. I'm not that person, and it don't make me happy. And so I made a decision at that time to lock my hair, and I was like, they just gonna catch this in my piss. This is how we rocking. I never got a urinalysis. I completely had all the charges dropped. It never stuck. God had just walked me through the courtroom. I'm like, I'll end it on this note just because that's a tidbit. The first time I went into court, they tried to try me as an adult. Then I opened up vulnerable space with my father and challenged him to recognize me for who I am and not what he would have liked me to be. He supported me through that trial. The second time, the cop who attempted to prosecute me didn't even show up. They threw the whole thing out, just threw it all out, and nothing, like it never even ever happened. Nice. So I say that to say, since that moment, I've had to recalibrate, like, all right, what is manhood for Terrence? Because I'm not my dad. I'm not my environment. I don't sell drugs no more. Like, I want to make out who I am. And so I've learned a lot more about empathy and honesty. I've learned a lot about communication. I've learned about spirituality, being knowledgeable of my ancestry beyond just slavery, gaining an understanding of serve the world and create the reality that I want to live in. And that's what I want to bring into my family. But this is where I'm going to let you introduce yourself and talk about your idea of like relationships and building families and stuff, because these days a lot of people are still in that paradigm of what we were raised in, all that fear, all of that trauma, all of those doubts that I had. Some people, like, they in that. And so I don't always feel like what I'm offering, I'm not even going to say feel like, what I've been offering relationships don't tend to ever satisfy my partners, because they're looking for this traditional stability or the traditional means of how a man should show up, as well as what I've adopted and invested in myself over the years. So now I'm in a stage where I'm like realizing, like, okay, I need to get, there wasn't nothing wrong with what my pops showed me or like what role model he was. This isn't it's a evolution, like him plus some of what I've learned now. So that's the work that I'm doing to prepare for my family, is like, I might have adopted and gained some things that I noticed my pops didn't have, but like, I still haven't conquered his battles. I haven't conquered his mountains. I haven't climbed his mountains. There's some respectable thing. My dad had a nice 6-figure job with the Air Force thing, and he put my sisters through cheerleading and me through, and he did the best he could until they got divorced. You know what divorces do. You know what I'm saying? Like, he held it up. But even after that, my pops I always honor him and respect him because I watched him in a way that people fear. And I carry that with me, like even coming here to Philadelphia and attempting to change the narrative of what being a creative is as a profession and not just your child wasting their life and not taking on responsibility. Is like, I watched my dad fall into depression and like sacrifice all of his formal years to the Air Force for them to let him go, and then he became a contractor, and then they let him go, and then now my dad is in a position where he's disenfranchised and he's served so much to this country. And I always wear that on my shoulder because I'm like, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want to serve things and then it just all leave me. And you know what I mean? So what is something that you would share with me, because I'm looking for insight as well, but like, what have you identified with and come to terms with who you are on your journey of just self-developing and being your personal self? Like, I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I want to learn more about it.
Asking about like how in terms of how I serve as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I used to serve to my detriment. That's what the basis of Christianity is about, serving, and God will, He'll give you recompense. Even my family, I served to my detriment. So sometimes the service was something that I just turned on automatically, and it no longer was service. It was like, it was duty, but it was like it was love in it, but it was like occupational love. Like, I'm a mom and a wife. I'm supposed to love doing this stuff. Now I'm like, it's not really about the stuff that you do. It's about like the intention with what you're doing. I mean, that sounds so easy to think about, but I wasn't thinking about it that way. It may have come from having these dutiful parents. I'm not even trying to be funny. These parents from like the 70s, 60s, 70s.
Right.
They're in a weird place right now because now they're in their, what we would call midlife, but really it's like the end of this big cycle. And now they don't know what to do for themselves. It's so many parents that's like that. And they looking at us like, what are you doing, fool? Like, I told you, you supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, you supposed to take on the next, like, we got property and this, and you supposed, and I'm like, and all that will be just fine. Are you okay?
That part.
Parenthood is service, and being in a partnership is service. I was married for 10 years. It was sometimes too much, and I'm not going to take away the fact that whatever the other person thought they was doing wasn't service too. I'm sure that it was to that person, and then sometimes I can resonate with it. But sometimes you have to just be in it and not be doing so much. That's because I'm like, I don't know if that makes sense.
That made I've never heard that before, and it made amazing sense. It made perfect sense. You need to know how to be in it and not have to service.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's part of it.
You are your service to your children and your family.
Yeah.
Like, you being yourself. You just doing what you want to do with them. Sometimes, like, I'll be tired. Like, I changed my job so I could have more time with my kids. Because working in medical, I'm working 8 to 5.
Yeah,
so they in daycare.
Hours,
yeah, and it's expensive too. It's expensive in time and money. At this point, I would rather be doing what I'm doing and making a lot less money and be around them, because to be there for the development and to just be in the space with them. My daughters don't be wanting to do nothing. They just be wanting to sit down, the little ones. My son, he don't be wanting to do nothing. He's, Mom, you there? Like, I just want to make sure that you're here in this space with me. Just watch this show with me. He just wants you to listen to what he's saying. My son is a philosopher, and I dare say he's a scientist all around. He has very many science skills in his mind. Sometimes he be cracking me up, because one time I was telling him something. I was trying to teach him something about math, about estimation. If it's 4 or 5, the rules about closeness and all that. He tells me, I said, well, babe, my answer is 5 more close to the real answer. So technically my answer is close. And he's like, so my answer's wrong? I said, it's not wrong. He was like, yeah, it can't be wrong because it's infinite numbers between numbers. And he had to be like 8. I just looked at him. I was like, all right, go sit. You right. But he also says other things like that. But he just be talking.
Right.
And if I was so busy trying to do as a parent and trying to teach him this lesson, I wouldn't have learned how expansive his mind is. At 8, 9 years old, like, this guy, he's funny. So now I just be. And sometimes I get to slip into his world. sometimes I'll be like, oh, okay, I see how you see it, son. Like, that's cool. Instead of trying to make him do what I want him to do. My oldest is some things that she's experienced now due to us being not living in the same house for about 6-7 months. It was a long 6-7 months. It was terrible to me. I won't get into the details, but she has experienced a couple of different things that I would have rather her not experience till later. But my job is not to come in as a parent now that we're able to bring our household back together, and I don't really need to do too much to get her back where she needs to be. Because I'm saying, you hear, I'm even saying where I want her to be. It's really more about just being like, okay, well, where do you want to take this now? Because now you have this experience in this. So how do we navigate this? What do you need me to be in this space? And it's helping because now my kids they're saying things to me that they've never said before. And if I didn't have the opportunity to just be where they was at, I would still be doing in vain, and I would be missing the mark.
For one thing that started downloading was courage. Like, this is like giving me signs of just courage, because I needed to hear that too, like just being who I am, because I'm currently just going through some cycles with the moon in my life. So like, you know, I'm thinking like that's typically the strain, like you said, in any relationship, is like when you can't just be, and everything, like fulfillment and alignment with you just being and allowing people to be. And I liked what you were saying, like when you can really learn from your kids, and I'm applying that to just the relationship within the home with any dynamic in there, is like, if you could accept what you are and accept who you have, then when the moments come to serve or do, it's not going to seem like so dutiful or so like servituding, like a chore, because I want to do anything that it takes to be there for the people that I love. It don't even bother me. I love doing that. So I guess there was some fear rooted in the question I asked, because I was reserving my mind for the people I want. I'm leading them with the fear of what things were, and that's why I can't see clearly what I want to provide, because that's not it, right? So like that was helpful a lot. I always like to ask everybody before I be wrapping these Jones up, like try to create, like we were actually talking about it off the camera, like stuff on Instagram, something for 90 seconds, right? Like I made up a word. I don't know, did I make up this word? I could say, let's make Instagrammable content. Did somebody else make that word?
I haven't heard it before.
Right.
Real true.
I think I made that word, right? So, like, I'll give 3 sentiments of what I've received in this, and then I would like for you to do the same. Okay. Origin stories. I always liked to touch on origin stories because I think that the chosen ones, on the people who choose themselves and recognize their duties and their purposes and whatever else way people want to adjective that, is like when you know yourself, you one of the chosen ones, and you have an origin story like a superhero. You know what I mean? So you have to recognize your origin story like you a superhero. Like everybody has the tank of vat of whatever poured on them, and you know what I'm saying, fell out the joint, and then the hawk swooped you. Like, we all had those moments. So, like, that's my origin story. Like, I came from the UK. I landed in VA. And then I learned and absorbed this environment that I was a part of. And then it put me out as a leader to lead people who want to be their authentic selves and create things in this world and not be molded by a paradigm that don't serve them. That's what I learned from my origin story. And then so 2 other things I want to share is family. I grew up family first. And I learned from even studying and going within that wasn't something that my parents just made up. That is that is the cornerstone of civilization. People spent eons and millennia to learn how to honor who they create and who they create with. At first, that wasn't always intuitive. So the fact that our parents and our grandparents and our communities pass down traditions that's not supposed to be like a cage. It's supposed to be like a path so that you can continue to lay more stuff down. And I used to and cage myself in what the traditions or the family rules were. And then once I think that's what adulthood for me has become, is accepting the responsibility of, like when you mentioned that the partnership and the parenthood, like that service that comes with being a part of a community that you grew in, that's like the torch that gets passed. It's called adulthood. It's like, what are you doing to carry on the traditions and add value to not only the people who added value to you, but that are going to come after you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then lastly, when I think about my role or like looking forward as a man today, the most important revelation that I've gained probably like in the last week is being myself makes me, as you said, I'm that nigga, right? It's like I always had a tendency to absorb, because I want to lead people that I love a lot and lead them to the lives that they desire with no excuses. Like, this is what you wanted, this many stories in this neighborhood with these people, then you shouldn't substitute nothing for that. I'd be very, like, you should get what you want. You should earn and work for what you want. So now that I've been, like, recognizing who I am, I'm like, this thought keeps downloading that I will probably provide the things, like, that I would want to help people accomplish for themselves. I could see myself doing it and then just providing it to them. I have a tendency of like, if I can do it, you can do it. But sometimes, as now I'm turning on my man on, I'm like, I just want you to have this. Like, I want you to experience this. You ain't experiencing this. You ain't seen the light. You ain't seen this side of the grass. Like, I want you to be able to see it. And if I put the work on you, you might not get the work done. Like, we're not all made of the same thing. Or like when you start doing the work, it might turn out differently, that's dope too. But I'm speaking to, I always get a soft spot as a man for those who I know cannot protect themselves and those who don't got no guidance. Because I barely made it out of my environment with them circumstances. And I was terrified. Like, I was really like upset about the level, like I felt abandoned. So I look for those people to guide and protect them. You know what I mean? So shouts out to everybody. You know what you're doing. I'm not trying to switch your move up or nothing, but I definitely want to foster and create a shelter for those who know that they in danger and want to make some changes in their life. So I'll let you take over and you know what I mean, drop the mic.
Right. The first concept that comes to mind is I love to hear other stories, because I like to find this not as, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm always interested in the connection, because I feel like everybody that you meet and you interact with a certain way, you're supposed to. And the best way to know what you're supposed to do is to hear their story. It also helps me build the world I'm building.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear from different people that I've watched, for a certain amount of time, or that I've interacted with. I was very interested in your story. You said you was from the UK. I wanted to ask more questions. But that solidifies for me that I'm headed in the right direction as well. Because that's what I like to do. I like to hear it. I like to learn it. I like to visualize it. So you're telling your story. I'm visualizing you, but younger. Maybe your hair is shorter. I'm visualizing you in different spaces. And that helps add to the magic that I have, because that's that exchange.
Yeah.
Showing up as myself and then watching you present who you are as well. It's helpful to also know that when I talk about my parenthood, that I can relate to other parents and I don't feel crazy. Sometimes I share and I feel like it's so silly, it's so egotistical to feel like you're the only person that goes through it, but that's because of the emotional part that you feel. So sometimes I'll be like, dang, this is crazy what I'm going through. Yeah. Ain't nobody gonna want to hear what I'm talking about. But that's not true. Parenthood is a journey, and realizing who you are in terms of guiding another soul, that's important. So back to the same premise of sharing is important. And then I feel like there were times when it was some things that I may not have had to say when we were sitting here, but you understood where I was going with it. So I'm always excited about that kind of magic as well. It's mental acuity, mental stimulation. I feel that what you experience sometimes when you I could give example like when you're high, if you're smoking or if you know indulging in psychedelics, the neuroplasticity, the growth in your brain, I get that just from sitting in conversations with people, because I feel like we're all, when we're creative, we're anthropologists as well. We're studying each other. We're studying the world around us. We're creating it as well at the same exact time.
Right.
So it's like, the building blocks are moving. It's kind of like Tetris. Everything's moving at the same time.
Yeah, move around. That's a good
around.
analogy, yeah.
So that's why I see the world that way. So my takeaway has been that I was grateful that you were sharing with me while you were pulling from me. Because I feel like that's how we both benefit the most from this, that we both have something to take back and apply it to how we're going to go about our everyday lives. I have taken more courage as a creative doing things on my own, and I feel like you've taken more from me about being a parent and building a family and building the next part of your world. So that's awesome. It's dope. Thank you.
Nah, real rap. So I always like to end these with a close-up, so you mind taking us home and ending the video?
Sure.
All right.